Hello, welcome back to Al Talks. This podcast I started 3 years ago to chronicle me starting stand up. This podcast is a weekly podcast. It comes out once a week, and this is just a small little introduction video into the podcast. So, down below in the description of each episode, you can go to my Linktree and find links to everything connected to me. This podcast is available on YouTube, which you're watching it on right now, and also on Spotify. But yeah, that is just a small introduction into this podcast and everything that goes along with it. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. In this podcast, I will mention a couple of things. First off, as I mentioned last week, I watched Jim Jefferies' new stand-up special on Netflix called Tool Policy, which was hilarious. I'm pretty sure I hurt my mouth from laughing because of it, because it was so funny. And I watched it while I was away. A friend of mine got married. Congratulations. And while I was away up in Northern Ireland, I was watching it. Also, actually, at that wedding, I met the guys who were at the venue who were cooking. They are. The venue operates from kind of they don't March. It's like March to May essentially, because the really during the summer months, because like it's an outdoor venue. So the two cooks that are there, I think Michael and Rory, if I'm not mistaken, they are incredible cooks. I got to talk to them afterwards, and Michael is related to Kieran Hines, who is Kieran Hines is actually his uncle. And I remember he said, he mentioned the name. I was like, what? It was like, the guy who was in Game of Thrones, and he showed me the picture. He goes, you know him now? I was like, of course I know him. He's been in, like, there's countless movies over the years. But, and like, we were talking a little bit, because I work in the food industry as well. And because I had met Michael first, and I was talking a little bit, it was like, Michael had mentioned that he had worked with Manny Madison. Now, Manny Madison is a chef from Canada. He owns a couple of restaurants, and he has his own channel on YouTube where just cooking stuff, which I used to watch. I don't anymore, but back in the day I used to watch, and I was like, oh my god, have you ever met Action Bronson? Because they used to, I think they were on the Munchies or Vice together. I can't remember. And he's like, well, I haven't, but Rory, the other chef, has. So we were, after the wedding and during the wedding, we were talking and stuff like that. Oh, it was just like to, to, to go to somewhere and just completely randomly meet people whose uncle happens to be one of the best Irish actors in the world, and then for another person to have worked with Maddie and Action Bronson, who was the other person. It was just like wow. It was like to be honest, you never really know who you're gonna meet where. It was incredible, yeah, wild stuff. But yeah, Jim Jefferies' new special, yeah, really really funny. But like I mentioned last week, the joke he closed on was the joke previously got like a huge laugh, and I was like, oh, that's the end of the special. And then he continued on, and I was like, okay, that's a bit of a, I don't know, strange choice. But yeah, it was just similar thing happened with Steph Tolev, but like I said, that's their artistic choice. But yeah, really really fun episode. It was also a great time up in Northern Ireland at the wedding. Really enjoyed myself. And what am I going to talk about? Yeah, back in a sec. So yeah, so I don't know if you'll be able to see that. Yeah, that's. Can you see that? Yeah, that's so. Originally, that's the poster that was on for Mark's and Richie's show. It was supposed to be them basically, calling out and criticizing and satire over the whole Diddy situation. And then I think about 10 days into the fringe, a TikToker went and complained about the show. So she was saying that they were glorifying Diddy and, making light of the victims of his abuse and stuff like that. And then this kind of rolled into the people contacting the venue and getting the show cancelled. The guys lost, I think, like 5 or 6 thousand euro in marketing costs. They had to rename the show to like Bad Boys of Comedy Show or something, and they had to like edit out the poster. There was like an angry mob who tore down the other posters. Like the venue cancelled their show essentially for the fringe run, which was supposed to be on from the 31st of July till like the 24th of August. And it was just they renamed the show, they continued on, but it wasn't selling as well as the other as the unrenamed show. And it was just like I said, this person who made the original TikTok, she is not. I don't think she's a comedian. I don't have TikTok, so I couldn't really look up on her account. But from what I'm aware, she kind of just blogs and stuff. Like I to be honest, I don't really know why she did it. It was stupid. And then other people online kind of started, but like I've met. I know, like I said, Richie. I know him as a friend of mine. We've met loads of times before. Mark, I've never met, but they'd put like last year's show. They did one about another kind of satire. Ripping the piss out of. It was, I think, I can't remember what it was called last year. Let me have a look. Yeah, this was last year's one, which was Prince Andrew Tate Appreciation Hour. Again, another satire thing. It wasn't, it wasn't supposed to go after any people of victims of abuse and stuff like that. And while there was no backlash at that show, they did Vistaprint over in Australia when they were there. They refused to print that image on T-shirts that they were selling as merch. Eventually, Vistaprint changed their mind, but not before Richie and Mark had to go to a different supplier to get their stuff printed. And it's like I was saying, it's just like it came out of nowhere, and it was like, why? Like I said, I've never met Mark, but Mark, I've never heard anything bad about him. Richie I've met, and he's a lovely person. It's like, why? Like, people put effort, money, like they couldn't use any of their. You're talking about thousands of euros in material that they couldn't use, like the promotional leaflets, the posters, the merchandise. They lost so much money on ticket sales when eventually they renamed the show, and it was, they were an average. Therefore, they were getting like 80 people a night, and then it was down to about 20 per night. It's, you're talking about huge money losses. And it's for people, there's a lot of things that are very difficult in comedy, and when stuff like this happens, one thing that did happen as well, that the comedy community rallied around Mark and Richie, and it was great to see them to receive that support. And another person who actually supported them, the reason I mentioned this during the Jim Jefferies podcast, Jim Jefferies was on the podcast, so this was brought up by the guy who was hosting, and he was like, he pretty much said the same thing as like people, because this woman was like, she's like, I'm not one to usually do this, but you did do it, so it's like, I don't know, but obviously, like, the venue did cancel the show because they got so much complaints over it, but she kind of started this whole thing. It was just, yeah, it wasn't great to see for someone who put so much work and effort into it. Like, I've been to the Edinburgh Fringe, but I didn't get to perform. And I know it is very, very nerve wracking. It's not an easy thing to do, to promote a night, and even to promote a club. It is like, I've had my hand in helping beforehand to help organize a night, and it's not easy. A lot of like logistics and background stuff goes into it. So for someone to come out and personally attack you over something that's supposed to be a satirical comedy show, it's just like, I don't know. It's just like, these are not things that you want to see in comedy. And like I said, I'm not performing at the moment, but the way I'm seeing comedy is that the audience don't. It's starting to kind of degrade, and they're not really showing appreciation. Obviously, not every show, but I don't know if it this is the root cause of it. But I have a small suspicion that kind of is, and I've seen it online as well with other professional comedians going after each other, and specifically and recently Anthony Jeselnik like going after Ari Spears because he posts a lot of crowd work clips, and he was saying that that's not really comedy. But what I feel is happening that a lot of people who don't really know about comedy see these clips online and think when they go to shows that they can talk and interrupt and this, oh, I'm helping you create this clip, which is not the case. If a comedian is somebody who does crowd work stuff, that's great, that's fantastic, that's what they're doing. But if it's somebody who's not, especially if it's a person who's starting out, this can be nerve wracking. This is like, it could really offset the balance in like, um for like, how do I put it? Like, okay, the first time I did stand up I got heckled because I had a crowd interaction bit, because like I did do this at the start as well, so I am part of the problem. Well, I don't know if it's a problem, but I think I was listening to Chubby Behemoth's Sam Talon's podcast with Nathan Lund and Becker, I forget his name, but and he said something which I think is really profound for comedy. He said comedy is subjective. Comedy as an art form is subjective. What you find funny might not be what somebody else finds funny, and that's fine. But because comedy is an art form, you're allowed to express your art form in whichever way you want. But then it's, yeah, I don't know, these kind of like attacks on comedy, especially dark comedy. It's like, this is nothing new. This has been happening for a long time. In the 80s when Carlin and Sam Kinison had to go to court, in the US and lose millions of dollars. It's, yeah, I don't know. Comedy is kind of in a rough spot, and we like really have to band together, especially the people who are dirty comics and do dark comedy, because as you can see, like, I mean, it's horrible for anybody to having to go through that stuff, which is, it's just, I don't know. And also it's like, how could you have looked at that poster and been like, oh, they're praising Diddy for stuff he did? It's like, obviously it's not. I don't know. It's, I suppose this is kind of the world we live in, um, where this is the sort of stuff that happens because, I don't know. Maybe it's people being too opinionated and not being able to see the satire and just see controversy, or maybe it's just people, the news messing people's heads and stuff like that. I don't really know. Like, yeah, it seems like any of the online stuff I watch about comedy is all it's, I don't know. I suppose, like I said, comedy is not my words, but like, sometimes it's subjective to each person, but also as an art form, you can express yourself in whichever way you feel like. And then I suppose not everyone will always like what you put out, so there's that also. So I don't know. Yeah, a bit of a downer to end on, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. strange. Like I said, I'm kind of taking a break other than doing a show in a couple of weeks' time. Well, at this stage, it'd probably be like probably would have already done the show, or we'll see how that goes as well, because that could be anything can happen really at this stage. We live in dangerous times for comedy, in the wise words of Ari Shafir. I don't know if I mentioned. I might have mentioned. Yeah, I think Ari's moving to London, and yeah. So I think that's it really for this episode. Yeah, a lot of stuff. Hopefully, going forward things will improve, but I don't really have high hopes for that. I think it might get a little worse, but I think also the kind of this like radical pushback on the comedy. I think the opinions are slightly changing because people seem to be kind of get to a stage where they're just sick of people being outraged over everything. So I think it is kind of coming to a slow turnaround. Hopefully, this will. Obviously, it'll never fully go away ever, but I think maybe we can get a bit of a respite. Hopefully, we'll see. Anyway, as per usual, all the links down below to good content, my own and my friends who are also dark dirty comedians, who would really really appreciate your support and everything. And go to comedy shows, people. Buy tickets to shows. Watch comedy. Watch dark comedy. Watch all sorts of comedy. Don't be afraid, because at the end of the day, we just want to make you laugh, and yeah, that's all that is. We want to entertain you. That's all it's ever been, and we want to have fun while doing it. And I don't want to be restricted or told what to do. What can I say? We don't live in a fucking fascist state. So anyway, enough of that. Links down below for all the good stuff. Follow all the people. Follow me.